All right. Welcome, we're live. Welcome, everyone, to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bad Luck Gamer, and we have the Glue Boy here.
Hello, it's me.
Yeah. And, I don't know. It's been a bit of a dry period as far as Pathfinder has this last week or so. I mean, we got the Firebrand book that has come out or is coming out, I do believe.
I do not remember what book that is.
It's the book about the Firebrands. That's all it's about.
Nice.
Oh yeah, if they're subbed to it, they're getting the PDF for it. Yeah, and it is where we're getting that new gunslinger archetype subtype. The way of the trigger brands.
I remember hearing the description of it, and it sounds very dope.
It's very Final Fantasy. It's gun swords, nice. And all the other composition weapons.
That'll be fun.
It's really cool.
Because that leads into the topic, but we'll get to that later.
True. Actually, yeah, I do actually have a plan today. But you know what? What are you into there? Trigger Brand is already. What did it come out with? I believe it's supposed to come out in the Firebrand book. Was it not?
I'm going to archive and nothing.
I do archetypes. I don't do class stuff. Who do you think I am?
Yeah, exactly. You never make class guides. If you made class guides still, you'd have new ones coming out.
Right. Wait, the sniper about the spell shot. Trigger Brand. Oh, it came out in Impossible Lands. Yeah, it's already up.
Holy shit.
Oh. Never mind. As a book that I wanted to look into, but just haven't yet. Really need to at some point. But anyway, yeah. What are you up to, Glue Boy? What are you doing?
Well, a mix of things. As this week has been very, very intensive, as I've had to get literally everything done before Sunday. But it's been going great, actually. I've been very productive. I got a lot of shit done. And essentially what I'm trying to do is, because I could just lesson back and then do a little bit of stuff. But instead, I'm going to work ahead and give myself a bit of a vacation now that school's over for me. Once Friday comes around, I can turn in an assignment. I'm good.
Yeah, so this is your last week, right?
Literally, yeah, this is finals week.
Nice.
And
That's exciting.
I did my final yesterday. That one that actually took effort.
Right.
So yeah, I'm basically just gonna give myself a little gap of free time, and then just throw myself into whatever line of work I can grab myself. I have two options, both of which will actually help my YouTube career, because they're two lines of work that primarily allow me to have headphones in while I work, which means it's all 40K audiobooks. Because I'm trying to be the only 40K YouTuber that actually reads the books, except for Luton, because I know he does. But the others, I love them to death. Love you, Bricky. He does not read the books very often.
He has a book club.
He does, but a lot of his stuff is from the fandom wiki, which just lies.
Yeah.
And I don't fault him for that, because it's the most accessible thing, and it's what most people do. It's just the fandom wiki it's just headcanon sometimes. They're just here's the thing, and it's what, where'd you get that from? And it's just someone who has really bad reading comprehension or just made it up. However, turns out a guy I know and I'm good friends with and is a actual 40K savant. Man has I don't know what the type of it is, with the memory of you read a thing and it will not leave your brain. You have permanent access to whatever you read.
Right, yeah.
He actually wrote most of the better wiki site, Lexiconum. he's wrote like most of their articles, or at least contributed.
Crazy.
Yeah, so like he was the one also who is like pointing out like, oh, just stick to this one. But I want to actually sit down and read all the books because it's important.
Yeah, I mean, like, if it's what you want to make your potential career on YouTube about, you know.
Yeah. My job is to have enough information that I can properly make it very concise and make it entertaining with how I deliver it, but it's still accurate because I want every video I look at the other ones surrounding the topics and I'm like, I'm going to find some more fun facts to include that most people probably haven't heard of.
Fair. And also, hey, Hector. Saw you
Hello.
earlier. We were just talking. Just hello.
Also, the Firebrand way is, or Trigger Brand is really cool. Holy shit. This rules. Should foes parry your blade or dodge your bullets? Neither. They should be watching their pulse. What the fuck?
It's great.
Oh my god, you get to steal something as you're attacking. You make a strike,
really cool.
It's a 2-action, wind them up. You make an attack and then a thievery check with a -5 penalty to steal something off them. This rules. If I play Gunslinger, I'm probably gonna play this.
Fair. Gunslinger's really, really fun.
They're
honestly.
super fun. Like, all their rules are dope. I want to play one. I haven't had the opportunity to try one out for a bit. I mean, admittedly, I had an opportunity when I switched out from Adrian, but I wanted to specifically challenge myself to play a smart character.
Yeah.
He was taking a very vested point in the plot. Which I'm excited to return to. I can't wait to mess with him in Foundry.
Yeah, we are gonna be starting the last few episodes of Lancer soon, and then we'll be heading back over to Pathfinder. So
I'll be sad to see Lancer go, but I'm excited to see Pathfinder again.
yeah, Lancer's a good game. For me, I think I just struggled to really make a big narrative out of it. There's just nothing exciting for me as far as anything outside of the mechs.
Yeah, that's fair.
Actually, I ran a
Lancer lore is interesting. It's still not my favorite sci-fi like setting in general. It has a lot of stuff that is just cool. I think putting Lancer mechs inside of altering your own like sci-fi rules for the setting was just a good idea. Like, just take the mech rules and port it over to whatever setting you want it to be in.
Right. Yeah, I think that'd be a good way. You know, like kind of like how Armored Core did their stuff. I like Armored Core's lore actually.
How did they
Very
do
interesting.
it? As someone who has never played Armored Core.
It's definitely, it's like what happens if we had like a super spacefaring age and then like a super solar flare happens and like completely nuked everything, and now it's a fight for survival and all humanity is kind of like built behind these mercenary companies fighting for resources for different organizations.
That does sound like a FromSoft like sci-fi world. They can't have a game set in a place that's just kind of like okay to live in.
No, everything has to suck.
Everything must be degrading as society crumbles. I can't wait to see mech patches back again.
Yeah, Phoenix. Well, you know, you'll have to tell us in the Discord how it goes.
Hell yeah. It's it's the rules of the game are so fun. Like I love how it plays.
For sure. It's a game that I thoroughly enjoy, and if I was just better with sci-fi stuff, or if Lancer, because like I think it's the hi Snack Happy. I think as well, what really makes it hard for me in Lancer is it's just massive. It's just there's so much space and everything that it's hard to really like feel like you're building somewhat of like a impacts, I guess, on things.
Yeah.
That it feels like I said, Armored Core feels better because the fights are serious, because it's all about getting various materials, supplies for like organizations that are supporting humanity, and that puts you head to head with other groups.
Does it take place on just like Earth, or is it like also multi-planet spanning?
It is multi-planet, but most of the mech stuff is on Earth, because it's like the solar flare thing happened, and now this unique material starts spawning, like is created, that grows like on the planet in crystals or whatever, and that stuff is used to like power technology.
Okay. It's interesting too. We mentioned this like last time, because I'm the opposite, where I like sci-fi because I think the themes of nothing can really be fixed is really interesting, and personally I just like space because of how massive it is and how like pointless individual parts are in the grand scheme of things. And I like my settings to be the heroes chipping away at a problem that'll never actually go away. It is just mitigating the threat, so like tomorrow you survive. Any game or setting or book or thing I've read that is largely just like the threat doesn't go away. You can't just fix your problems. And yeah, you say you killed this big bad, good job, but what about the planet next over that has another big bad that, because you were here, is now going like wild? Like, that's my peak shit. It's Metro 2033 does that, because in that world there's no hope at all. You just gotta hope that like you go out in a cool way. It's literally your only hope and aspirations in that setting.
Yeah, and actually, and first, yeah, thanks, Snack Happy. I do want to do more builds for sure. It just, I can only do so many videos in a week, and a lot of my videos are pretty tied up with like getting archetypes out or doing some other stuff. And I've been trying some other video types lately, so
making a build is like, whew, that seems intensive. As someone who struggles to do it for our home games every once in a while, I cannot imagine doing it somewhat regularly.
It's not bad, but I definitely try my best to make interesting builds. I actually have 2 builds currently waiting to be made into videos. I just haven't had the time. But yeah, honestly, I don't think it's the massiveness of space that you like. I think it's mostly just that grimdark kind of setting, because in Warhammer, which is I think your frame of reference,
one of them at least. I have multiple that I can directly point at.
Well, for Warhammer, it's because there are obvious threats that are constantly facing like the universe in a variety of ways, or at least humanity in a variety of ways. What's another one, I guess, that does the same
I think
thing?
The Witcher also does it to a pretty fun extent.
Well,
The Witcher, Metro, like there are worlds where you're the main character you play as.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about the massiveness of space. Because
sci-fi settings are like.
Because the thing is, the problem with Lancer, depending on where you are, it's either everything is fine, it's post-capitalistic, and everyone just gets to like live and be happy, or you're playing out in the long rim, where people are literally turning to piracy to survive, because it's just whatever material you can get your hands on. And but see, this is the thing, right? The thing that all these have is there is something that is wrong that just can't be fixed, even if you are capable of making things at least a little better for yourself or a group of people, at least for some time. Like in Warhammer, it's like the Space Marines going into a planet to root out gene stealer cults. It's like, well, it's either they deal with the threat somehow, where the planet gets glassed.
Yeah.
And there's not really a middle ground. And even then, they can deal with it and then be like, we don't know if we got it all. Glass the planet.
Yeah. And hey, that's not true. I have good takes on Eldar. Fuck you. Not true. Actually, I'm sitting here thinking about all my favorite sci-fi settings, and I'm realizing the only one that does the massiveness of space really justice, I think, is Warhammer. Because when I'm thinking about others, is like, I mean, Lancer. I'm thinking of like Alien. Oh God! Now that I'm like sitting here thinking about sci-fi, I'm like, what do I like?
Yeah.
I think in general, I like the grimdark tone, and I think that the grimdark tone lends itself to sci-fi like really well. But I feel like it's underutilized. I feel like it could more often lean into the fact that like the universe is massive. Because like think of Halo. Halo is a whole giant alien race, like a covenant, like armies coming to kill you. And the other planets we see are like, I think we go to like 2 or 3. You have the Halo, Earth, and then like Reach, or whatever, wherever Infinite is set. And like, there's not a lot of actual other locations. It still feels very like grounded, despite being like massive, like in scale, where we're told how massive the scale is, but it doesn't feel like that in the gameplay. But the gameplay is, run through level, shoot things.
Yeah, I think Mass Effect did space really well.
Mass Effect does. I like Mass Effect. I guess, I don't know. It's not my favorite sci-fi setting. I like the game, but the setting itself is like, it's fine. It's not something I've ever delved super deep into and got super invested in, despite really enjoying Mass Effect 1 and 2.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really good because there's a variety of things. You look at the Krogans, one of the most capable, war-hungry, races ever imagined, and they're currently dealing with their imminent destruction because they're incapable of reproducing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that same kind of grimdark tone of they're trying. They're out here fighting to survive.
That's funny because the Krogan are my favorite part of the Mass Effect world.
Yeah.
It's just like I like it. I think it's a thing where you're playing a game and you're like, oh, that's neat, but like you don't like get super invested in it. You're just like, oh, that's kind of cool actually, and then like you just kind of move past it and think about other shit. It doesn't hook me. Like there's this innate feeling of just me being like sucked into a thing that isn't fully there for Mass Effect, at least for the setting. Everything else I adore. The characters are really fun.
It might just be the approach, how you get introduced into it.
That's
like
true.
People, you look at Mass Effect and you're like, oh, cool, this is a cool space RPG, but like maybe it's a lore series you hearing about like the crazy things, because there's also a lot of stuff that happens outside the games that are still lore like appropriate. Like there's some stuff with the what's that organization?
Spectre?
Cerberus?
Oh, or Cerberus.
Yeah. Where they're making super soldiers out of essentially dead bodies. And it's like, well, they're not dead when they start, but they kind of like get these people and they fill them with so much like tech and like brainwashing programming and everything that essentially they become undying super soldiers that you can blow holes into, and they'll just keep going until you do enough damage where they just fall apart. It's like super grimdark stuff that outside of the narrative you can find a lot of really cool stuff in. And
Dead Space is kind of similar to that too. Dead Space is a lot of world building outside main games.
Mm-hmm.
And all the fucking comics and movies of it, which its lore is also really fun. It's super like creepy. I don't know too much about it because I've only ever played the game, so like my partner is describing me like Dead Space lore, and I'm like, that is really cool. Because they got super hooked into like just taking in the Dead Space universe.
But you know what? I think it's time. Today's gonna be a pretty casual chat for the most part, because we're on the edge of like more stuff coming out. We're just kind of in that period of the Firebrand book is coming out. I don't know. I'm not super excited about the Firebrand book personally. It's probably got some good stuff in it, but the Firebrands themselves just don't have a particular flair I like. They're a bunch of freedom fighters. Is
I like
essentially
the Firebrands until I saw their archetype.
well, the Trigger brand wasn't even from the Firebrands.
No, the
It's from
archetype that
Impossible Lands.
the archetype that you covered them, right? Firebrand Braggart.
Oh, the Braggart, yeah.
Yeah, which was very underwhelming, honestly.
Right.
Yeah, I was really sad to see how that one was.
They just don't have a strong theme, and it's so strange that they went with Firebrands when, honestly, I would have been so for a Magambia book, just a straight book about the Magambia stuff, even though they covered a lot of it in the Wangi Expanse stuff. I would still liked, because it's very interesting how the Magambia works.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they added in a whole adventure path, I guess, about it as well, but they just don't have an actual full book on it.
True.
And so it's kind of this situation of yeah, I want an Arcadia book. I mean, more stuff about the setting of Galarian would be really cool. I'm glad that they're finally doing a new version of Qianxia. That's gonna be really, really cool. And I'm excited to see a kind of less racist, I don't think is the best way to put it, but less stereotyped, like Eastern setting stuff.
Yeah, now that there's a lot more care put into that stuff, like it just gets a lot better as time goes on. So many like old settings have to deal with that.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it was never done in malintent.
No.
People enjoy the lore and stuff and everything. And to be fair, it wasn't really a thing where you could just source people who might know more about the cultures as easily.
Like when you write something in like the 90s or early 2000s, where it's like, it's kind of hard to also just find the information. Like nowadays, It's so easy. Everything's so connected. It's like, sorry to relate this back to Warhammer, everybody, but it's like the issue that currently hits Warhammer Fantasy with Araby, where Araby, as it's described in like the flavor text, is literally the polar opposite of the opening like acknowledgement from the Mwangi Expanse book. Where
Right.
it's such a strange and exotic land. And it's just like, you're describing the Middle East. Like,
right.
This description that's so exotic is just, they're not white. And so, like, it's that thing where it's like, this is so clearly not trying to be offensive or anything. But, like, if this got a rewrite, I'd be pretty cool. It got a little rewrite to actually accentuate fun parts of the cultures and the mythologies and going away from the stereotypes, just like Paizo's been doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting, too, because, like, it happens to Anglo-European places, too. A lot of people are like, Scandinavia, the Vikings, and all they talk about are, like, the Vikings and how they went out and pillaged and raided, and they talk about, the Aesir gods and all that. But Vinland Saga, which is, funny enough, a Japanese-made anime based on parts of history of like the Vikings, in a sense, has done a lot of great ways of really showing like the culture of the people and everything. I mean, there's still like a heavy war influence in it, and it's kind of anime, so they gotta have some cool anime fights in Viking time stuff. But the recent season has literally been all about the protagonist becoming a slave and having to like work himself through serfdom essentially to buy his freedom back from this dude. And the King Canute, who is the king of Denmark and England, and everything he's done like politically to garner all this power. And it's not just Vikings fighting and pillaging and everything like that, but they do talk about that, and that's still a part of it for sure. But I like a lot of the takes they do on it.
That's why the best Viking thing, though I do need to watch Vinland Saga, it's been on my list for a while, is Norseman is the absolute best Viking show, because it is actually Scandinavian made.
Yeah.
Like, first and foremost. And also it makes a lot of jokes of pointing out how a lot of conceptions of Viking stuff is just not true. Which, by the way, anyone in chat, if you have not seen it yet, it's on Netflix. It just, best way I can pitch that show is it's the cinematography of Game of Thrones with the comedy and improv of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It is one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. I adore that show.
But it's so like in Pathfinder, I'm so excited for the Qianxia book. Arcadia would be cool. I really want an Arcadia book as well. That's where the Beast Gunner comes from. And what's more sick than, you know, people whose whole culture thing is to hunt beasts in a ritual and then to do a weird taxidermy alchemy thing to turn these weapons into magical guns that can shoot like petrifying rays or, you know, bolts of fire.
Yeah,
it's very, very interesting.
Super funny.
And also like Arcadia has one of the few like guns in the setting. There's a few origin points and Arcadia has one of them, so it's really, really cool. So I'm all for an Arcadia book.
Yeah, it's kind of like Monster Hunter. That's the vibe I get when reading through Beast Gunner stuff.
I really wish that this you know, second edition is the edition where we finally get the whole world setting in books that we can use, because they didn't really do it all too well in first edition, honestly.
People keep buying the books and they keep selling. I don't see why they wouldn't. I hope they do also. Yeah,
and they're so well done this time, especially. So I'm excited for that. I also saw earlier someone was saying how Paizo should do a 2E version of Starfinder. We can say we wish for it, but it's not gonna happen anytime soon, unfortunately. I really do too.
Yeah.
Because I think they got some really cool stuff. And I think just 2E's combats, there's so much good stuff that got put into 2E. So it's just, I think, something that will come with time. But they just announced Starfinder Unchained, which is kind of like the, all right, so here's kind of like a book that kind of fixes a lot of things you can add to the setting. It's kind of like their halfway point to the next expansion, pretty much.
I imagine this is completely baseless, mind.
Enhanced? I thought it was Unchained. Well, enhanced either way.
That maybe the current reason that Starfinder's staying the way it is to like help give something still updated to those who are kind of upset at 2E's changes to Pathfinder 1E. Maybe that's like one of their target market.
No. I don't think so. One, because that doesn't help them. They still changed rules for Starfinder. It doesn't play the same as first edition necessarily. It's closer, but it's not the same.
That part, but I also despite that, I would love a new edition of Starfinder only because I think Starfinder is also a very cool setting, and it has a lot. The fucking classes are so cool. I love like all of those special things it's got, but I don't like the core rules. I feel very dated and kind of annoying to like work with.
It's just yeah. Well, when you compare
Pathfinder
it to
2e sounds awesome.
When you compare it to 2e, yeah, it's just that some of the aspects of the game just feel dated now. Unfortunately, 2e ruins people. Gosh, there's so many people jumping into 2e from the D&D side too, and then they like look at D&D and they're like, "Oh, I've been playing a bad game this whole time." It's really funny.
Yeah, God. I keep seeing those tweets on my timeline. It's very fun.
So, I mean, like, for sure, I think everyone wants an updated Pathfinder. I think it's just going to take some time. But, you know, I'm going to open this up, but today we're just going to talk about, like, some more things that we want to add to Pathfinder or what Paizo can do. Like, I would like to see Paizo eventually tackle, like, a new kind of genre for tabletop, like, other than high fantasy. I think that'd be really cool. But if y'all have anything, go ahead, shout out in the chat. We'll talk about it. I'm just going to start off with, like, my biggest one for Pathfinder 2e anyway. Bring back Inquisitor, please.
Yes. Oh, my God. Yeah, you've completely sold me on it more and more. And I completely agree.
It's so good. I don't care if they change the name. I don't care if they change, like, the idea behind Inquisitor. Because, like, right... I think everyone understands generally how the Inquisition is theme-wise. Yeah. And in the setting, it's like, you don't want a group focused completely on, like, subjugating magical people or monsters and things, necessarily. But I really like the idea of, like, they were almost like monster hunters in a way. Their big thing is they got a lot of effects. They can mark targets and pursue them. They were the ranger, like, paladin mix.
Yeah, that was, like, when I played through Wrath of the Righteous, I was like, oh my God, this is actually, like, feels very close to the, like, paladin thing I wanted to play. So essentially, it was just it was what I wanted my Hell Knight playthrough to be in, like, a class rather than my weird split multi-class I had to do to pull it off. Right. And then it just pulled it off better. It just worked better, and I was winning more fights more consistently. So, like, it's such a cool class. Like, if anything, like, I like the idea that they are very knowledgeable, like, monster hunters that deal with, like, the really evil parts of, like, the setting, like dealing with the undead, demons, fiends, like all that stuff. Just make them, like, very dedicated to wiping out the actual true major threats.
Yeah,
and I like that.
Styling them as, like, cult hunter, like they go and hunt cultists and
like stopping rituals before they happen. That'd be so cool. Like, then also, depending if they change it to, like, more monster huntery, then, like, oh, what are you specializing in hunting? Oh, how does your guy go about it? Like, imagine some subclasses that are, like, more I'm picturing it kind of like how Blood Hunter for D&D was just like was just for Matthew Mercer to make The Witcher in D&D.
Yeah,
I want that. I want The Witcher in Pathfinder.
Yeah, a class that is kind of like that. I think they do. I think there's a place for a class that's kind of like, it's a martial class, but it has a dab of alchemy and a dab of magic in it to enhance the game style. I mean, you can make a Witcher style character, I think, easy enough in the setting with archetypes and all that.
Some finagling, you can make a lot of things.
The reason why I think Inquisitor itself needs something is because, like, one, there's not really a brand spell or system currently, like marking enemies. to give effects. I mean, Ranger kind of has it with Hunt Prey in a way, as in they target an enemy and they get better against the enemy anyway. But I like how the brand system works a lot in first edition, where you mark an enemy and they like take extra damage when anyone hits them or whatever. There's some really cool stuff, and I just like the Inquisitor style, you know, just kind of like the Van Helsing or any other like big pseudo-religious monster hunters you can think of. Very much fits into that Inquisitor archetype, and it's just really good.
They're always just fun characters in like media. Like the very knowledgeable monster hunter is so fun. The guy who just like knows how to take down beasts, knows their weaknesses, like so cool. It's like I mean, I was about to be like, oh yeah, imagine like pressing weaknesses, but that's just what investigator does, right? Is that the right class I'm thinking of?
Sorry, I was reading chat. What was it?
Like I was saying, like a class that can kind of like exploit weaknesses or create them. That's just Thaumaturge. I'm pitching Thaumaturge. Isn't that their whole thing? Is like exploiting or creating weaknesses?
Yes, that's their whole thing.
That's it. I said investigator first, which is not true.
No, they have stuff similar, but yeah, that's exactly a Thaumaturge. And Thaumaturge can kind of fit some of that narrative, I suppose. But again, I just want Inquisitor. I just don't feel like there's a good Inquisitor counterpart yet. And you know, Castrea, like, for sure, there's some great homebrew or like not bonus material. That's homebrew material. What's it called? Like third party content out there for sure. We're just talking about like what Paizo and its official capacities can do this time. Because like technically you could just homebrew whatever, right? But we're talking about like what we want Paizo and their like, you know, massive company, at least in comparison, to do. Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, Thaumaturge is just not the right feel. I like Thaumaturge. Don't get me wrong. I think Thaumaturge was a wonderful addition, and I like the way they play, mechanically speaking. But give me Inquisitor. Give me just a really cool monster hunter, please. Please. Let's see. What else?
You know, I have one that I'm also bringing up in case I can be proven wrong in this instance. So, a thing I would really like Paizo to do. I want more firearms. Because in their current state, like, say for example, I just want to play a revolver-toting gunslinger. I don't feel like there's a lot of guns that hop out to me like that. Because, like, I could take the slide pistol, but I don't know, the aesthetic of it is off. I could take a flintlock pistol, but it's a flintlock. Like a hand cannon, but I'm pretty sure that's like a single shot. Oh yeah, no, that's like a junk cannon that you just shove a bunch of shit into. I want like a 6-shooter kind of deal. I just want more variety to make it feel like the gun technology is advancing, and I have something that makes me feel like a gunslinger rather than a crazed inventor or something. However, the whole trigger brand thing, I actually really like the combination weapons. Those are super dope.
Combination weapons are sick.
Yeah, those are dope. The actual firearms themselves, like, I want to play a pistolero. Like, that's my shit in most things. I love, like, single shot, like, pistol stuff. But, like, there's not a lot in current second edition that really pulls at me like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, just due to balancing factors, they can be like, here's a gun that shoots more than once.
Yeah,
you can get the air shooters, which have actual clips that you can fire multiple rounds from.
Yeah, like that. There's that, but it's just like the thing of I find a weapon that I'm like, ooh, that'd be super cool, and then the description of it, I'm like, no, it doesn't really fit, or I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. It's like, oh, the rules are kind of lame. It's the gunslinger fan in me. It's just like I can't go the full gunslinger I want to be. It's like the one major limiting factor for me to get up and like play Gunslinger.
Yeah, I mean, it's I understand completely. I get that. It's that class of aesthetic because in the end, every weapon has to be flintlock adjacent.
Yeah.
In some capacity, because the gun's whole mechanic, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love the fact that guns are a different ranged weapon. You know, you can't fire them as fast as bows, but when you crit with them, they do massive damage, and they have that high payoff because of it. And Gunslinger, being a fighter S class that can, you know, have a higher chance to crit than other classes, makes it feel even better. And not only that, but the reload mechanic, which is the worst part about guns, because who likes reloading and the reload every shot?
Yeah.
They at least give Gunslinger a lot of cool reloads that you can do other stuff with while reloading your weapon.
I know the sniper is probably the one that, like, of pure guns that is more appealing. But, like, you know, the most I could spin it is it'd be cool if, like, I had a like a double action revolver, and then the flavors, oh yeah, I'm reloading. But in fact, my revolver's just so chonky, it takes so much time to actually cock it back and forward again.
Yeah. But that's just something that you gotta, like, you gotta put that aesthetic on it, you know?
Exactly. It'd be a thing I'd have to take up that legwork rather than, like, it's the one instance I've had in Pathfinder where I'm like, oh, I'd flavor it this way and do this, and it's like, that's the thing, Alex. I'm like, oh shit, really? It's like the first time that hasn't been hit has been with Gunslinger.
Yeah. To be fair, I haven't really taken a look too deep at Gunslinger yet, so I might find some really cool way to play Gunslinger in the future, for sure.
Oh, hell yeah. But Trigger Brand is dope as shit. Might play that.
And I agree with the chat for the most part. Talking about the change from Paladin to Champion and everything it's done. I thoroughly enjoy it. I like Champion a lot. It's a very strong class that even if you aren't like the Sword and Shield style generic champion, you can be the two-handed Mauler style like Reckham champion, you still get those defensive actions that allow you to essentially play as your team's juggernaut, you know, negating damage from enemies. I mean, you can skin a lot of it as like your character jumps in the way and like deflects most or some of the blow. And with especially with Paladin, funny enough, Retributive Strike is really fun.
All the religious themed classes always have like some really, really good like choices you can make. So much like combinations and customization you can do.
Yeah, well, you know, just coming from various cultures of heavy religious, you know, heavy religious zealotry. That's just kind of part and parcel, I suppose. And you're saying it warps the design. Like, what do you mean warps the design? Almost has a negative connotation. But at the same time, yeah, this is a little side tangent, but I talked about this in my Paladin video, actually, talking about the D&D 5e Paladin. I like D&D 5e's Paladin. I think it's actually really good. I think a class that is that mix of defensive striker with a little bit of healing and a little bit of utility is really cool. The problem with that is I think it would be even better if the system had more characters who did more things. Like, classes that were better at DPS than the Paladin, but didn't have its tankiness or its healing or utility, you know?
The decision of specializing rather than taking one large class. It does like a lot of different things.
Because playing a Paladin feels good.
It feels amazing.
Feels really, really good. And not just for the smiting. Smiting's a big part of it, sure.
Well, that part was real.
But I'm saying in general, even if smites weren't like as powerful as they are, just the fact that you can deal damage, you feel like you're doing damage, you feel like you can tank a bunch, and the healing all makes it feel really, really good. You know, Castria, I inherently disagree, because you can run similar encounters with different comp groups, and it's not necessary. Your champion only gets 1, maybe 2 reactions per round. And I mean, in a 1v1, sure, I'll say, but these games aren't designed for 1v1 combats. You know what I mean? Or not even 1v1, but like one boss versus a bunch of party members. Like, all fights need multiple enemies. It's just inherent.
A lot of balance comes down to
I don't think anything makes it preventative, as well as fighters' damage. Like, I've already done the math and proven fighter does such like marginal damage, maybe an extra round's worth of damage in a normal fight than any other class. It's really not that much. Artificer is also a half caster, but so somehow the Paladin I play with just feels way better. Yeah, I mean, it's just Paladin feels fun. Paladin feels genuinely fun. And if they just made more classes that felt fun for what they were doing, like Battlemaster Fighter, I think can also feel that way in a lot of ways. If they just gave it a little bit more functionality, I think it would be better, for sure.
Yeah, their Fighter, I think, is 5e's most boring class as someone who played a good decent amount of Fighter. It's just like, it doesn't feel like there's enough to keep you invested in playing Fighter. Where it's like, it feels like I'm doing the same things over and over again. When Paladin, I have options. Just why, like, I enjoy Paladin so much. Because, like, I have so many other tools. I'm not going to use all of them because there's only one good option for everything, Smite. But, like, I have the options to do things.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a good example of a class that I feel like covers. It's kind of like a jack of all trades style class, but it just does feel really well for most of them. And Battlemaster, I think it's just something fighters should have had inherently. You know what I mean? I think all fighters should be Battlemasters.
Completely agree. Because, like, you know, actually, what the most boring fighter subclass is? Champion.
Yeah.
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 What the fuck did champions even do? Other than, I can crit slightly more.
They have a 10% crit chance. Yeah. It's a 5% increase. It doesn't mean a whole lot, and that's actually why I the whole +1 debacle with some characters and classes always just makes me laugh, because it really doesn't make that big a difference in the end.
Not really.
The numbers just, especially one, because as well, right? The game is so much more than just combat that even fighters, like, if you look at my character tier list, fighter does not do well, because fighter's so good at combat. There's nothing else in fighter that applies to anything else in the game. They have no utility. Besides a little utility if you want to go with the recall knowledge style fighter, which, you know, I've seen do really well. But, you know, you have to trade out combat feats essentially for it, and it doesn't feel as good. And narrative roleplay wise, it's all on the weight of the player, how you make someone who hit with weapon good, interesting. It's not like source where it's like, the source of the character's power, where it comes from, what their heritage has, all that kind of narrative stuff, and weight, the theming that can come behind that can all be super interesting without the player even having to invest all that much energy into like making it interesting. Well, fighter, you have to work at it. It's just generic. That's not a bad thing. It gives you a lot of room. Some players like that because they're like, no, I want to make a character who is just a person, not chosen by destiny, not lucky by birth or anything, and make them insane. I mean, that's what Guts is, right?
Yeah, literally. It's a person who is born at the lowest and crawls their way up to the top. And, like, that's a fun story for a lot of people. But if you're not a very proficient role player, like, it's probably not going to be pulled off that well.
See, and that's the thing. I don't think there's any such thing as too generic.
It doesn't have that kick that like every other class has.
Just a note on having done the math and seen the margins. Those margins, for a reason, per Paizo's design, are for a reason. Going much further than intended is not a goal of Paizo's. So you're saying that they can't do more damage? Or they can't add more damaging things into the game? Is that what you're trying to say? I don't know, that doesn't really state all too much, honestly. Because, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, Fighter does more damage than other classes. For sure. That's kind of its point. Its purpose.
If it would be lame if the fighter didn't do good fighter damage.
But, I've sat there. I've done the math. I've averaged it out inherently. Fighter does equivalently an extra round's worth of damage in a normal fight. Which, sure, feels good. But, like, it doesn't change anything. And other classes trade other things for it. Barbarian can take an extra round's worth of damage, So it balances out in the end. Paizo designed all the classes with balance in mind. Yeah, but see, the thing is, right? If they add damage to the game, it really adds damage to everyone almost equally. Because you can look at it as, because fighter has a slightly higher chance of doing crit damage, that it might go a little bit further for them. But you also have to understand like how crit damage works. Barbarian crit damage is nuts. Because base hit barbarian damage is so high that it would do massive amounts. And then we're not even talking about Ranger, who has probably actually the best DPR in the game with Flurry. Fighter itself is not keeping the damage cap down, actually. It's just the whole system in general. And while some of the other classes might not have as high as like a crit multiple, they offer other things instead that are beneficial, even outside of combat, like say the Inventor, who can be, a great party crafter or anything. But I guarantee, I've done the math, I've looked at it all. Legendary strikes don't add that much. They really don't. Are you doing more damage than everyone? Yes. Is it so substantial? Not really. In fact, we, in our personal home game, we give extra XP at the end of every session based on what character does the most damage. and other rewards as well beyond that. Our fighter has gotten it a few times, but not nearly as much.
No.
Our barbarian just unlocked a whirlwind strike, and now his DPS is insane. I'm playing a Magus. Magus damage is insane, especially when you combine True Strike with Spell Striking, because you just get to re-roll and take the higher attack, which actually has a higher chance of critting overall. So and our fighter has maxed out attack stats.
Oh yeah, when they hit, they're scary, but we have other scary options. It just depends on how your party's built.
Yeah.
I mean, I have access to some really nice damage, but I just have to have the things come to place because wizard. People
That's
have to
true.
fail.
Yeah. I mean,
People have
area
to fail
damage.
and I have to hit. So.
Yeah. But anyway, more stuff that can be added. Honestly, I want them to add rules for improving magic items. This happens so much in so many games. It makes me insane. You find a weapon or thing early on that has an effect you really like. You're like, I like this thing. But then as the game carries on, you find better and better weapons and such. And you can't get the same effect on a different weapon in the game. It's like, oh, I have a really cool poison dagger that has a chance of poisoning the enemy. But it doesn't matter because you just come up to another weapon later that does so much more damage that the added poison effect doesn't do anything. And in Pathfinder, specific magic weapons, yeah, it's because they have just flat DCs that they just fall off inherently, which doesn't feel good.
No, it's always
I've started using a homebrew in our games where if an item gives a flat DC for whatever reason, it's either that DC or your class DC, whichever's higher. Because your class DC goes up like to a fair amount, but it's not super high. So it makes finding certain other specific items at certain levels good because they typically have higher than your DC. But it allows you to carry the ones that you do like with you to the end of the game if you so choose.
Yeah, and I'm now sitting here thinking of all the RPGs I've played that don't let me just upgrade magic items and how stupid that decision is.
It's so dumb.
Why?
I don't know why they do this
annoying.
in gaming.
Like, Skyrim has that, and it's so frustrating. Just, like, let me craft and use the system and not have to invest all this work into, oh, now I can give flat bonuses to my magic shit because the game decided that it wouldn't be cool to have it.
Yeah.
When I play Skyrim, I just kind of console command that thing in. It's like, I'm just going to give myself that skill. Lord knows I'm not investing in smithing.
Right. It happens to me all the time with like poison daggers, because I'm like, oh yeah, cool, I want to do a poison build or whatever.
Rule.
And then you just get to a certain point in the game where you just can't feasibly use that weapon anymore. And they don't have a higher version that you can use.
You know, I feel like I've played up too many RPGs where poison builds are mitigated to lower level characters, and then once you get higher level, they're like, what, you still care about poison?
Yeah, it's like, yeah,
poison builds are fun.
I like dot damage builds. They're really cool.
Yeah. That's my favorite shit in like RPGs. I love playing the poison build that like kills somebody as like, and you're like, all right, well, job's done, I can leave, and you start walking away and they die while they chase you.
Yep. I mean, like, I'm all for keeping it balanced, sure. If the mechanic behind the poison damage is all about, like, it allows you to play more defensively because your damage is being done for you in a sense, sure, I'm all for that. I mean, that's kind of the point of actual poison weapons anyway, is you hit the enemy and then all you have to do is just run away at that point because, you know, they're just gonna die. But I don't know. Actually, you know what? This is a very and them dying while you just stand there. Yeah, but see, that's the thing, right? It's not that we just want an instant kill weapon.
I mean,
We just okay, I know, but it's more like it allows for different styles of play. It allows you to, you know, use a weapon that, yeah, its DPS isn't as high, but once that poison hits, it's like now the enemy is on a timer, you know. Because that's how they do it in the Souls games. Like, you can use those poison weapons. They're not the highest damaging weapons, and in honestly speaking, they Vorpal, I mean, it's such a high level rune, and it's actually not that good in Pathfinder 2nd edition. It's actually kind of garbage.
Isn't that like the insta-kill one?
It does have an insta-kill effect, yes. But let's see, what was all the effects of it?
While you're looking it up, I'll just throw this out, see if anyone understands this reference. The ninja's blow dart in the Deadliest Warrior fighting game. I made my friend very, very upset with that.
Yeah, the target must make a DC 37 fort save or be decapitated. It's an insta-kill on a reaction. That you have to roll a natural 20 on the strike. And it must be a critical success. The thing is like, enemies have such high fortitude. Where if you crit, you behead them. Yeah. See, effects like that, I don't like. Because, one, critting is too easy. And two, that's just a good way to ruin a fight.
Yeah, you have this major boss character that you've been hyping up for the entire campaign, and then just, oh, you got a nat 20, DM rolls a nat 1.
To be fair, that is why in most games that it's like instant death is put into, bosses are just immune to instant death effects.
Makes sense.
But, you know, like, but that's this conversation has sparked a point about tabletop design in general. Tabletop games, unless the GM is incredibly skilled at encounter design, it heavily favors damage over anything else. There's not many encounters that you'll come across in standard, like in the modules specifically, where having more damage is just not inherently better than everything else. You know, it's just unfortunate. Go ahead.
It's nice if you like doing damage, but, you know, also at the end of the day, damage isn't everything.
Well, see, that's the thing, right? You can have other encounters where doing damage feels good, but isn't the only way to get through encounters, you know?
Yeah, it's the difference of, like, is doing damage the only thing you should be doing, or the characters that can deal damage, hell yeah, good on you, keep doing the damage, but, like, the other party members can contribute in other ways that they're more effective at. Like, it's that level of, like, game design that it needs.
Well, it's It can be done. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
If you're
100% can be.
good at encounter design, it can be done. It's just like, for instance, right? If the enemies do a lot of damage and it's like, it's who goes down first, us or them, that makes something like champion or cleric feel better because they need to mitigate or heal in order to keep your party going longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's also like utility spells, like being able to suppress enemies. A lot of the times you don't have to do it because, again, you don't need to essentially mitigate damage that much because encounters aren't designed that way. But if you make encounters where it's like, oh, we need to suppress this enemy, that makes magic casters with the ability to like create a wall or put an enemy to sleep or make the enemy run away in fear for a round, you know, much more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all completely possible, but you need to design encounters where there are enemies that have to be dealt with in different ways, or there's so many enemies that your group needs to do this. And another problem with that, though, is the game isn't pushing for that. So you can't just throw this at any kind of party. If you have just a party of all damage dealers, then, you know, they're not going to be capable of handling other types of encounter design. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to understand what your party is capable of. It's when I was designing stuff, a lot of the times it was very combat oriented. So, like, it's the intention for the players to have damage dealing stuff, but I'd still go out of my way to make sure in a battle, even if it was just pure improv, that like other characters, if it feels like they're not getting anything done, I would find a way to give them something to like somehow contribute to the fight. But that's because I did a lot of like on the fly patching of a like party balancing and enemy balancing rather than actually understanding how the game works. Because I am one of the people who did not understand how CR and D&D 5e worked, and I still don't.
CR, it doesn't work. What do you mean?
Work.
It doesn't do anything. It doesn't reference anything.
Not really. I was just never very good at it, so I'd always like just fix it on the fly and find ways to just make sure every fight, like everyone has some little win in the fight, and then it's okay to end. But and I never got to a point where a fight was actually like a major slog or pushing to it. But you know, it's also not great game design. It's just in the moment be like, oh, this happened. But I was playing with a bunch of very new D&D players, so it worked out fine. They didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. Honestly, it's just, I think, unfortunately, I think the way to do it is just to have your game's inherent design like force the players to adapt to it by slow integration of elements. Like, it's like in your low levels, all those elements are there, but a lot of them are a little bit more muted so that, you know, it's not like an instant TPK if your party doesn't follow the proper mechanics, essentially.
Yeah.
They can push their way through it, but it's something that the more battles the players do, the more they are like, okay, maybe these fights are getting really, really hard. Maybe we should try like a different strategy, or maybe we should actually try to like to help mitigate some of these bad things happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you get to the later levels, you can amp those effects up, and then it's just like, oh, controller wizard, go! Make sure that those enemies over there have to wait a few turns before we can get to them. Or, you know, champion, we need you on the front line up against this enemy because we need to mitigate a ton of damage from that thing, you know, and you're the only one who can do it. Or, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. that really validate other styles of play. Because legitimately, I'm playing. To be fair, we're over leveled, and that's due to the way we do experience, and it just over levels from the modules, really. But we're playing Age of Ashes. The combats are so brain dead easy because all we have to do is just do the most damage to get through it. I'm playing a Magus, and I have all kinds of cool spells, and I have spells prepared for certain situations or to do certain things or whatever. And I have like a lot of setup rounds I have to do because it's like, I cast haste on everyone, or I'll do this, but like it doesn't feel like I need to most of the time.
When you have like that one combo that just consistently works and pumps out that good damage.
It's not even combo. We just do more damage than the enemies can handle. We literally clown on bosses just because. I mean, again,
trip them.
We're like 2 levels over where we should be at this point in the module. So that's what's causing a lot of the issue, which could be fixed. But I think even then, if that wasn't the case, we would still be doing just fine.
Yeah, just combats might take a little longer.
Yeah. Which would be good for me because at least in my setup rounds actually are worth it. But it's just because we got a barbarian, we have a monk, we have a fighter, we have a magus, and we have a champion. And we just do so much damage. And not only that, but our group also heavily abuses attack of opportunity and tripping, which also is another reason why we just stomp every fight, because our characters are so good at tripping enemies that we just get free attacks all the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, the trip and attack of opportunity is such an abusable thing in Pathfinder 2e, actually. Especially because we have a monk who has stop movement. What's it called? It's their unique. It's their unique style of attack of opportunity, which only triggers on movement, but it can interrupt movement actions.
I never had it when I was a monk, so I don't remember what that is. I never noticed it if it's an innate monk thing.
Stand still. There it is. Yeah. It's like attack of opportunity, only it doesn't work on manipulate actions, and instead allows you to interrupt movement. So sometimes an enemy's getting up, our monk just crits them on standstill, and then they stay on the ground, and they have to use another action to get up. So, I mean, yeah, everything trippable, also kind of silly.
Yeah, just trip a giant worm.
Yeah, we did. That's what happened.
I think I was there to see it.
You were in that fight, yeah. Purple worm, You guys ended up tripping it, and it went prone somehow as a worm.
You know, as it be.
As it do. I already said what it is, Lentholium. I don't even think it's the delay at this point. So it's like, encounter design can be done to validate more styles of play, to make more things interesting. And the thing is, right, these extra styles of play do not interfere with damage being good. Damage is always necessary because a fight can't end unless enough damage is done. So characters who do lots of damage can be, are always helpful. So adding other ways that other characters can shine never hurts a game. But because the game is so open, you don't need special comps. That actually invalidates certain types of play because it makes it unnecessary to take those actions.
It's always an interesting thing, 'cause I usually am playing DPS in some aspects, so it's never part I see, but I sometimes see other people have to deal with that. Only thing I have to deal with is the fact that there are some times where it's just man, missed my spell. Anyways, now I sit here.
Yeah, that also never feels good.
You know what? Single cast spells, single action spells.
I agree, actually, fully.
Very cool.
Though Pathfinder has a really good way, at least if the enemy succeeds a save without crit succeeding, something still happens.
True.
Also,
unless
thank
you're
you,
fighting something scary, unless you're fighting something scary, or like the position I was in, where like, yeah, I could keep casting spells and stuff, and I will, but like, you have like such a low % chance of actually hitting anything with how stupidly high some bonuses are, where it's like, all right, if this enemy gets a nat 1, I'm set. Then the damage will really fly. Which that sometimes just happens in Pathfinder, since bonuses and big scary monsters be big scary monsters.
Yeah, and unfortunately for spellcasters, they're kind of in this weird design hole of we can't give spellcasters bonuses on things.
No.
Because then otherwise they just have some instant win spells. And go ahead.
It's a part that relates to my actual like biggest issue with how a lot of tabletop games are designed. Is that the way I always put it is, imagine playing XCOM, but everything you have, every single attack has a 50% chance or lower to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not fun. Like, you'd get super annoyed. It's like, why does tabletop do it? And that, I understand, like, if it wasn't like that, things would die much quicker. A lot of combat would be way too easy. But, like, there are a lot of moments where you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I have, like, a 30% chance to do this. Like, not even against, like, a specific DM. It's like, oh, the module's doing this. And we're at the right level. And it's just picturing, if this was in any other medium, this would be, like, lambasted for being like this.
Yeah. And hi, Nicholas. There was I guess they could have done a more horror thing in Dark Archive for sure. I'd love to see Paizo do like a full on like actual horror style module.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I don't like, see, the whole point of rolling dice is we're telling a story, but we want to make sure that we don't know the outcomes of events.
Yeah.
And I get that, totally. But I do think that when it comes to certain kinds of things, your characters should have this sense that they can just do it without... It's like, one of the things I absolutely hate in D&D is a character who's fully spec'd into a skill, unless... If they have expertise, it's a little bit different. But if they don't have expertise, a wizard fully spec'd into arcane can roll less than a barbarian at any level.
Yeah.
Any level. Yeah, sure. The wizard has a +9 or +10, but the wizard rolls a 3 and the barbarian rolls a 15. The barbarian somehow got the check over the wizard. In Pathfinder, at the very least, when you start getting to the higher levels, the check at level like DC is so good and like so well designed that if a character doesn't have the skill, they're just not gonna have a chance. And if they're only trained, they're only gonna have a little bit of a chance. compared to a character who's a lot more trained, who honestly at some levels can just auto pass certain skill checks.
Yeah, and that's the fun of it, that at least the skill check part's still, but I think Pathfinder still has that problem sometimes of like still the like I'm a competent warrior on the battlefield, but I'm probably just gonna miss this fight, these attacks because just how the number game adds up.
I mean, for like a fighter, probably not, but like, uh, there's too much room for error in some kind of fights, and I think that could be mitigated by enemies having certain kinds of defenses that you have to find workarounds for. Like you have to do certain maneuvers, or you have to work on flanking, or something like that.
Yeah.
Where, like in the game I'm designing, if you attack normally at another enemy and they're not defending themselves, you will always hit them regardless. If an enemy is just stock standing still, you will always hit them no matter what. You're too skilled to miss. But the enemy is always doing something, whether it's guarding themselves, moving, or trying to parry your blows, you know. The enemy is always doing something in return to attempts to negate or mitigate your attack. And so the gameplay comes around with finding ways to prevent enemies from doing so, or working with your teammates to get around it. And then there's just some enemies that no matter what you do, you'll always hit them no matter what. And the whole point of them is to clog up the action economy in a sense where you have to deal with them. You can't ignore them. So you have to spend turns chopping enemies down, but you're always chopping enemies down. So at least there's that kind of feeling to it.
Yeah, at least you're doing something. Because it is like the most feels bad when you just set up like a thing and then the game's like, no, you didn't roll good. Or you didn't even roll bad. You just rolled a 13 instead of a 15 today. So no, you don't get to do damage. Now you get to sit there and take damage.
Yeah, and it's also just in part like not a good system that doesn't have like reactions, so that at least it feels like even when it's not your turn, you can do something.
It's the thing I was messing with when I was trying to run some 5e stuff. Is Bradshaw has a really good video on turning like 5e into more witchery, which is primarily you drop the AC of creatures, but then you double their health, but then give them like a bunch of weaknesses. So then the game is more of like you're probably gonna hit the guy, but your damage, if you're not actually thinking things through and trying to play tactically, is just not gonna matter. And then emphasizing a larger thing of making sure you prepare for the fights you go into, because it was a whole like Monster Hunter style like witchery. You have a contract against a creature, you have to figure out what it is, already know what it is, getting the information on where it is, what it's weak to, all that stuff. The Witcher quests in like The Witcher are like. And it worked for the few sessions I ran it. People were a big fan of it, but I'm certain that better DMs than I could even hone it to be something even more interesting.
Yeah, and then we got some good questions and chats here. Unsatisfyingly, not being able to just do it can also be emphasized by crit fumble decks. Yeah, crit fumble decks. I hate crit fumbles in general. It's like, I'm a really badass warrior. Oh, I rolled a 1. I broke my sword, or I threw my sword or something. I hate that shit. I absolutely despise it. Yes, can it create fun moments? Sure. It can also just humiliate your characters, which no one likes.
Yeah, it was always something I took extra special information to give of like the only enemies being humiliated by nat 1s are or the only people being humiliated by nat 1s are the enemies. If the players get nat 1s and they just nat 1 on something, it's usually that the enemy shows like a sudden moment of competency, or they're just really skilled, and it's emphasizing that this is just like I swing, I stand, I swing, I stand. It's like you're dueling this knight that you're fighting. Emphasizing the skill of the enemy or just like sheer luck if like sheer happenstance just messes with your fight, like stuff like that. I always did my best because I saw DMs just humiliate people for nat ones. I'm like, that's not fun. So I just took
It's not great.
extra effort to make sure my nat ones and nat 20 descriptions for things was always way more satisfying. And the key one to do is amping up like the player. You rolled a nat 1 or a nat 20, like what do you do? Like how do you make this swing? Because like you've been in this duel with this guy for a bit. How do you do this cool extra bit? Like over time, it turned from them being like, I do like a spin stab, and they're like, nice, okay. And then I amplify it, and then eventually, by like the end of that campaign I was running for Avernus, people were like hyped up when they rolled nat 20. They'd be describing their cool action move, and it's like, hell yeah, that's what you do. To amplify descriptions so then people can like use them as roleplay avenues. However, there is some games that have really fun crit decks and fumble decks. Wrath of the Righteous, Wrath and Glory, the Warhammer 40k one. Both of their crit decks and fumble decks are really fun. Because it's in the game design. Just like, it's out of your hands, it's a cool card system, and the enemies have to deal with it too. So it's a mechanic rather than like, you messed up as the player.
And I think there are ways it can be done and made interesting. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on minimum proficiency requirements to certain checks? I think they're necessary. I think it only makes sense. Because, right, it's kind of like telling people to make a wicker basket. They might be able to figure it out, but if they've never made a wicker basket before, it's going to be deformed. It's not going to look as good no matter what. But they still might make a functional basket. But then it's like you tell that same person, okay, now I want you to make a motherboard for a computer. There's a different crafting check, right? If you don't know how computers work or anything, there's no way you can physically make one. Even if you have all the parts right there, you just can't. And so, like, I think it's necessary. I don't think it's something that should be overly emphasized in the system. But I think it's something that is necessary to prove that, like, proficiencies do matter and what your characters are skilled at matter.
Yeah, instead of, like, a lot of 5e stuff where, like, all right, make a check, and then everyone at the table's like, can I make the check? And you're like, I mean, yeah, I guess. And then, like, eventually somebody's just gonna make it. If you have, like, 6 or 7 people at your table, like I did, and ask for a check, and everyone does it, more often than not, someone's gonna roll about 15.
Let's see here. Do you allow instant assassinations against unwary high-level NPCs? Situationally. I mean, it's just kind of like, right, that's the reality of the situation. Sometimes the most powerful people are felled by the dumbest of things. I mean, that's where we have the whole story of Ass Blaster coming from. Even though he wasn't necessarily a powerful character.
He was a major threat.
He was a threat in a sense that, like, the whole town would turn against you if you did anything to him. So what do? Assassinate him in the bathroom.
Yeah, shoot him.
Makes sense. That's why good design is you don't allow the players to sneak up on your bosses like that. And with how high stealth can get in these games and how ridiculous it can be, that can be hard to do. And it's not fun when the big bad is instant killed in any sense. You want it to be a big encounter. So that's almost an onus on the players to also respect the setting by not doing anything cheesy like that. And that's where, like, you need mutual respect on both sides of the table to have good tabletop. So, you know, that's just one of those things of it, like, does it make sense? Yes. Is it always the right choice? I don't think so. Let's see. Good example. The fighter rolling low, his opponent made a good parry. Wizard rolling low, see Gandalf at the door of Durin, you know. But to be fair, Gandalf did solve the problem. So, you know, like, he still got it, even if he did struggle a bit.
He needed
So
someone else to give the answer.
it's not quite the same, but it was a good like example. There's realism of cutting a vital area leading to instant death versus balance reasons to not allow it. I mean, like, I think assassination... That's why I don't like actual HP in tabletop most of the time. I think Deadlands does it well enough, because characters don't get more HP as they level up.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it can be dumb when the highest damage a character can do, stabbing, like, some dude in his sleep, cannot kill him because he just has too many HP.
He stabs someone in the neck in their sleep, and he wakes up and goes, "Oh, what's all this then?" And then like stands up with a knife sticking out of his throat.
Yeah, it's
like, you
I
fool!
don't like
That
it.
did 1d4 plus 5 damage.
Times 2.
Yeah. Oh,
Too
sorry.
bad I have 100 more hit points.
I have 100 health. You did like 20.
Yeah.
How are you speaking right now?
Let's see. But we usually assume that PC will succeed on some stuff and omit the roll. We do it only when it feels like they would have an uncertain result. That's true for the most part. But at the same time, if you do that too much, then the players are just not doing anything all game.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's also the thing of too much, where literally anything you try to do is up to a roll, which I've seen.
Yeah, which is fair. Which is a fair point. You shouldn't do it too much.
Shouldn't do too much. Shouldn't do too little. There's a balance.
There's a lot of times where I feel like a character's especially good at something. I just don't even ask for a roll.
Yeah.
But most of the time, when a roll comes up, it's only when it's something that would be difficult. Let's see. Or at least auto success does not feel like it would be as good. Good future topic. Granting the GM permission to mess with your character, dream sequences, deities, curse items, etc. Yeah. I mean, I think that could be a topic is, you know, hurt me daddy, in a sense. Like, when are negative things good in tabletop?
I don't like how that was put, but yeah.
But now you have to agree with it.
I guess that's the problem.
Let's see. Yeah, drawing the line for what requires member prisoners can be difficult at times. Oh yeah, party self rolls. Okay, good. For some reason, the YouTube stuff is not uploading on my screen anymore, so I had to check all that. Yeah. You'd be surprised what people can survive. Yes, but it's the margin by which they surprise is what we're talking about. Again, stab guy in throat. Yeah, sure, he might survive for like a minute. He's bleeding out. And even if he's not bleeding out, that should have been a significant amount of damage. But we're also talking about like an optimal situation where you can just stab away at someone in their sleep, you know?
Yeah, in the perfect situation where you can knife the boss in the throat.
So, you know. But yeah, there's... this chat turned into more of a what tabletop should be or have versus what we want in Pathfinder. I just want
the tabletop game.
Sorry.
Pathfinder is like the tabletop game.
It is the tabletop game. That's true. I agree with that saying. I do genuinely think Pathfinder overall does tabletop the best of any other tabletop. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy other tabletops more. And you can like what other tabletops do more for sure. But Pathfinder legitimately makes combat feel really good, makes non-combat exploration genuinely feel really good. I think if anything, it's just kind of stale because high fantasy is just done so much in Tolkien-esque fantasy especially. And the world doesn't like necessarily call out, at least to me. Like, it's interesting, sure, but like when I compare it to like Anima Beyond Fantasy, it's just not even a comparison.
Yeah, it's like me with Mass Effect. It's like, yeah, there's parts where I'm like, this is cool, but this is better. It's like that car meme. Like, it's literally that.
There's too much in these settings to make it feel like it's interesting, you know. It's like there's too many magic users, so magic doesn't feel magical, kind of stuff.
I think it's interesting. The extremes of like how prevalent magic is can be so interesting. Like like magic where it's now just an integral part of everyday life, and how does like things alter? Like how does tech development be altered when magic is a thing? To then compare that to low magic systems where it's a very rare thing for there to be magic. The one I think of is the Kingkiller Chronicles. Fantastic series. Magic is like a very scientific process in that universe. There's hard rules. Everything is like very sciencey. And it's so just accepted that magic is a thing that it's now a point where a lot of mages make their money not through like adventuring or anything. So that's just, why would you do that? They're just making like refrigerators or like microwaves or flashlights. That's all they're building. It's just like fantasy versions of those because it's so advanced. Because obviously the tech to refrigerate like food is ridiculous in a fantasy setting. That's a big boon. And like that's, I think actually literally the two things that are made the most in like the wizard college that it's mainly set at is refrigerators and lamps.
Yeah.
Like, and that I think that's so fascinating, but there's a balance to it, like a lot of things. It's how do you lean into the fact that like there's so much magic, which I think that Galarian and Faerun don't do very much.
Yeah.
Those questions aren't like answered of like how do things progress with magic? It's just like, oh, magic is a thing. Sometimes a guy will be able to throw a fireball at a bunch of goblins.
Well, I think it's more they do it because there's like the city of Nex, which is like a full magic city, and it's just one of the most advanced places like around, where if you go to like, even if you go to like Absalom, they don't have some of the same commodities. But the thing is, these settings don't do levels of magic well, because one of how like leveling works and everything. Like in these settings, it's supposed to be technically most magic users in the world are capable of like 5th level spells at most.
Yeah.
Anything above that is super rare. But then, as adventurers, you're going in, you're doing your dungeon crawling thing, you're like level 14, 15, something like that, and you come across enemy spellcasters who are your level using 6th, 7th level spells, and it's like, it doesn't feel like that the magic's that rare, you know?
Yeah, everybody can just cast like these super cool spells.
In the Kingkiller Chronicles, it's like, because it has such a high level of like where you can go with it, you know, it's like, or not where you, but like it has such a high floor that's just not accessible to most people. And even then, those magic casters are still not like the top of the top. They're really good at their field.
Who know the names of things, can like actually do ridiculous magic, and that's like such a hard process to do. You have to work your ass for it.
I do think it's cool how magic settings encourage individual crafters over industrialization. I do agree, actually. To an extent, I think industrialization is something where you can have that it's kind of like a, was it Babe? The old
pig?
story about the yeah, I think it was not as Babe was the bull. Who was the giant man who cut trees?
Oh, that guy.
I remember the bull's name. That's it. Anyway,
I thought you were talking about Babe the Pig in the City, the movie.
No. Paul Bunyan.
That's it. Thanks.
That's it. Is where it's like him versus the chopping machine for cutting down trees or whatever. You know, where you can have those situations where like industrialization, I think, can work at certain levels. But I think like that makes people who can do stuff that industrialization can't more exciting, more interesting.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, we got what you meant. That's all that matters. Magic can still be rare. Your party is just but see, like what we're talking about, Rylan, is the fact that it just doesn't feel that way in these settings. Doesn't matter if that's how it could be / should be, because that's never how it comes across in these settings.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing of just like we can point at a lot of different fantasy settings that, granted, aren't tabletop systems, but still kind of like feel this certain way, like with how magic is very prevalent in them. At the end of the day, too, a lot of this decision is purely because it's a game, and a game necessitates it to be that way. To some extent, you can work around it, but like for as open of a game as it is, like you have to have it open that the DM can like mess with that. But like, you know, it's like going into an MMO and then they're like, by the way, player, there's a 10% chance that you could be a wizard right now, and you go into like, I wanted to play.
You know, in Phoenix, actually, funny enough, I think I agree with that point. I think in these settings that some cantrips, like, people should just have access to, you know, like basic magic. I don't have a problem with magic being something that like anyone can do, but I want this setting to reinforce that high levels of magic are high levels of magic that almost no one has access to.
Yeah.
You know. In the setting I'm making, science or magic is more of a science, and it's more like you use magic by being able to properly visualize something, and it's not just like you know what a fire looks like so you can make fire. No, it's like you know and understand how hot the fire is, its effects, what causes fire to happen, all that kind of stuff. And it's a much higher level thing where when you put that in a setting where they're like high-tech and guns and everything, what makes more sense in like a combat situation, you know, bringing a gun or having someone who has to sit there and focus really, really hard to make a fire. And the higher level magic, even beyond that, it's just like, unless your character is something, which I don't want to spoil for the setting necessarily, you're only capable of utilizing so much magic around you to have certain effects, so that when the players come up against other things and they see, oh my god, this thing just created like a small mountain out of magic, that's something that feels like unattainable to the players, that level of magic. And then when they eventually do get to that somehow, then they understand what that means, you know.
You know, something you mentioned that I'm actually super down for, I think giving more people some form of innate spellcasting rules and can be used as a really fun method of roleplay, because something I did for my homebrew setting, how it worked is you basically elevate to becoming like an adventurer at any point from your birth to like whenever your particular race reaches its development years, like the 18, you're now 18, you're an adult now, good job, that age, you can just awake as an adventurer, which is just a person who's very in tune with magic. And how it would come out is some very explosive or just kind of dangerous thing, because an untrained magic user is super dangerous. And so in character creation, I told my players, like, all right, make your character, but also keep in mind, I'm going to give you a cantrip from any spell tree for free, with the caveat that it has to be tied to how your character will look, which then forces them to develop a backstory alongside getting a cantrip. And yeah, maybe like one or two picked like, I want to do damage, but then a lot of them did very like utility, or like I got prestidigitation or message, like very like, this doesn't help your build, it's just you, or even spells where it's like, I have this spell for some reason, this in long backstory reason, it's like perfect, I've promoted you to think about the game beforehand, and now you just have a fun extra tool. It doesn't break the game, it just gives you another thing to do.
I think it's a really good idea, honestly. I think that's something that's also just not done in games a lot, is tying narrative to character skill.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna pick this thing, you have to tell me why your character has it.
Mhm.
Because like I want it to be a choice of this is because my character would have this instead of because it fits my build.
Honestly, I think one of the best campaigns I've ever done was the Astro game, so you should know how to expect.
Yes.
It was all the characters started the campaign off as children, and children in the midst of a city being destroyed and like raided essentially.
Yeah, everyone was being murdered.
And I mean, we also had a lot of kids, and a lot of kids died. So, but the players had to like go through it. And the method in which they escaped determined what classes they could be essentially.
Yeah, it forced you to come up with a character, a rough personality, and then like you just had an avenue to go down once the game started.
Yeah,
it was
so
a
like
really cool way to do character creation.
It's really good, and I think more games need that kind of thing in it. Like, is this something I expect Pathfinder or Paizo to do? No. I think another game needs to come out where, can you do this in these games? Yes. I'm not expecting the companies, is what I'm saying. But
yeah, gamify character creation.
Also, build narrative into why your characters are the way they are. Because I've talked about this before. I have a video on this. I hate level ups. I hate how level ups just like take away the narrative from character progression, because it's just something that happens. And if you want to add that narrative to it, you need it, that's more effort on you and the GM to add it rather than just it being a thing. And I don't get me wrong, I like character progression. I love character progression. In fact, I was gonna say this earlier, and then we changed topics, but I ran a poll on Twitter about whether you think progression is necessary for tabletop or not, and most people said yes. And yeah. it kind of created this conflicting feeling in a lot of people who are more like that are more on the narrative side of things, because they're like, well, I mean, it doesn't have to have character progression, but I mean, I guess it is like a fun part of it, Character progression is necessary, I think, in any tabletop. Players need goals, or at the very least, characters need to know that their characters are getting stronger as the story goes on. But how that comes about, I think, needs to be done differently in tabletop in general.
Mm-hmm. I think I agree with that. God, now I'm just sitting about like, yeah, literally, like Dead Phoenix says, like, sounds way better than just making a list of flaws for your character. Yeah, so much cooler. Gamify character creation. God damn.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I like the advantage-disadvantage system for sure. But
oh yeah, it's fun.
I definitely think, I mean, it can be like a better session 0. Have things like, the children's campaign that I ran or whatever for your game, where it's just like your character, because the characters that you guys picked were your own, and we're very much like, it doesn't matter that like maybe some of the choices were blocked off from you. Essentially, it was still fun because you got to make the choices, and you just kind of took what I gave you and ran with it, and that's what made it fun.
It didn't feel like I was limited. It felt like I have a few options of the characters to play, and which one did I connect with the strongest inside of that like session. That the decision came more to that at the end of the day, and I was never like, damn it, I wanted to play this one.
Right.
Okay, I'll play this. It never felt like that.
Yeah, and I think that's just, I think more tabletop needs to, and that was the most immersed game I think we've ever run in.
Agreed.
We've done some other good ones in Anima for sure.
Oh, 100%.
But I feel like that one, the characters for the most part, were the most immersed and like narratively fit than any other game, because your characters were there for a reason, you know?
Yeah.
They had something they needed to do, something they needed to accomplish, or what have you. Where a lot of other games, like, man, it's so hard when you start a game to just be like, yeah, I'm an adventurer. You can come up with a backstory, sure. But making your players actively invest in the narrative, the world, their characters, is just rough. And to be fair, not every person wants that in tabletop, sadly. I say sadly because I just think it's better when a game is more immersive. But some people want to play the Gumball Warforged, trash character.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, I'm just this animate gumball machine. I'm a Warforged, but I'm this. Or you could do that with automatons, I guess. Or many other silly character ideas that, like, it's a game. Have fun with a game in a way that you think games are fun. But tabletop is such a special medium of being able to make your own narratives and your own stories that it always feels like a waste to me, no matter what. And every time I mention this, people are like, no, but see, I want to make these silly characters serious. But when it's put in practice, I just never see this serious that comes out of it, Instead, I just see a silly character.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that, and obviously, me, I do actually like playing serious characters. Where, like, I've taken characters that were initially jokes, and then retooled them to fit a serious campaign. That's what I did with Dax in our, like, Acquisitions Incorporated game. I took the general concept of a musician who is, like, scared to be an adventurer. And then I tooled it, gave a reason that he'd actually he wouldn't just quit. Came up with a reason to become, like, a very serious character, and it turned into one of my favorite characters I've ever played, of, like, my list of them. Eric Faulkner, my bard, who I absolutely adore. I'm super immersed in all the time playing him, and it's great. But initially, yeah, he was a joke character. When I've done that for characters that are very, like, surface level and then building them to something different, like the play test we did, where I played the proto version of Sebastian, and then retooled Sebastian for a campaign and created another one of my most favorite characters I've ever played.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's not something you can make a narrative out of. I think it's the intent behind it that makes the difference.
You have to actually mean it when you say, I'm going to make this character serious.
Right. And again, it's a game, have fun. Not every campaign is meant to be a very hard narrative or a very serious narrative, per se. But it kind of boils down to, like, respecting the medium as well. Because my biggest issue is I am a good DM. I'm really good at making narratives for my players. I'm very good at deciphering what my players want / like in games and giving it to them. And I put a lot of effort into making a setting that is rewarding for my players to go through. And when you come at me with a character who's just a meme, it makes it feel like the work I'm gonna put in for your character doesn't mean anything. Or that you're not respecting the effort that I would put in for your character.
Yeah.
I can definitely run games that are silly.
But you have to have the pre-game knowledge that, like, hey guys, kind of a goofy game. Don't feel like you gotta make anything serious, to, like, hey guys, making a long campaign. And then they're like, "Hi, here's my joke character, Boblin the Goblin." You're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. I mean, it's like an issue I've had with one of our players, Booter. It's just like, hey guys, all right, beginning. What kind of serious campaign? Everyone votes for like a 7 out of 10. Like, okay, so like a mostly serious game with a little bit of fun, right? And then it's just like he just goes goblin mode, and then he's just like, suddenly event happens. A bunch of chemical beakers and everything falls on the floor. His character's like, they're like cleaning it up, and then he's just like, oh, why didn't you tell me these were like poisonous before I put them in my mouth? And it's like, what do you mean? Why would you put a bunch of glass and chemicals in your mouth for whatever reason, any reason? Right.
Yeah.
And it's something that, like, again, tell me you don't want to run a serious game if you don't want to run a serious game. But don't make idiots. Don't make characters who just don't logically work in a setting. Because it's like, how is that supposed to work? How am I supposed to take it seriously? He ended up swapping to a Fae character, so at the very least his innate goblinness makes sense.
It does fit a lot more.
It does fit a lot more. But like, that's where you gotta have that mutual respect across the table. You gotta make a character who works in the game that is being presented to you, rather than, you know, just doing something because you think it's funny, because that can be super disruptive. Does it have to be? No. You can definitely play silly characters. You can play serious characters that can be silly. Look at Dante from Devil May Cry.
My boy.
Dude eats nothing but pizza and strawberry sundaes. It's canon.
It is canon.
It's canon. He eats nothing but pizza and strawberry sundaes. And like, of course he has other food as well, but like, those are the thing he like orders all the time. And yet, he's had some pretty serious moments. Fucking in 5, he does the Michael Jackson dance.
He does, and it rules.
And it rules, and it's kind of silly, but like, you know what? He's so badass, it just doesn't matter. You can do it.
I even as serious as Sebastian was, I still had a lot of jokes with him.
Yeah.
It's fun. You have like the jokes, even though a lot of the jokes for Sebastian was just he doesn't understand a lot of like societal norms. He he doesn't care about it, and also just didn't grow up around it. Or just the fact that he's a very literal person, and you'll say things very literally, which often you can just have that deadpan joke you deliver. And it's fun. It's great. But then he can go on to be like a very serious character who has like a lot of issues that he has to work through throughout the campaign.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like, and that's why if you gamified stuff like character creation, if you gave your character like, I think people would be more okay with limiting options if it felt like it was more of like, all right, here's what happened, now you have these options available to you. It feels like you earned those choices rather than choices were taken away from you, in a sense.
Honestly, you know what? I think next Pathfinder campaign you do, whichever short one, try doing like the children campaign opening style. Try to do that. Like, just have like a session 0 for the players, even one-on-one or like all together. Maybe even consider not streaming it in case like some people is like just performing in front of like an audience or recording, and then just have like a situation where people sit down and fully develop out of like a legit character like that. Just see if you can hit that in Pathfinder.
Yeah, it's somewhat harder in Pathfinder. Not that I think it's impossible, but like in Anima, it's easier because when you get an archetype, it doesn't mean your character is that class. It means your character grows in a certain way.
Yeah.
Where in Pathfinder, in order for your character to like be a wizard, right, you have to go to like a magic school, or you have to read a bunch of dusty old tomes, or your character has to like legitimately study to do this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still possible? Yes, but it's hard to like, I mean, you'd have to have a bunch of like, what made the children campaign work was your character, you went through a variety of scenarios. There are multiple scenarios, and then you picked which child you wanted to move forward with in the campaign.
Oh yeah, exactly that. And like, I mean, I'm wondering, obviously, you know, it's the difference of like systems. That's a good point you made. But like, instead, what if it's just like the vibe of a character, or even like you give access to like a free archetype, or like a decision of archetypes that's like, here's your general vibe of your character, and then it's up to the player to determine what class they go down and all that.
Ooh, I like that idea a lot more, actually. I think that's a potentially really interesting way to go about it.
It still gives the freedom to like make a lot of decisions for yourself, but it's just like, all right, this character I know for a fact isn't going to be a fucking wizard, but like you go down that path of like, here's their general style, and then it's fitting the stuff around the style you got.
I like that idea. Actually, I do like that idea. I don't know, Alex, you're making it harder to choose going back to Riptide.
Damn it, but hey, you know, like that's the thing. It's like, if you want to try that in Pathfinder, because yeah, you're saying, oh, this would be so cool to have. Oh yeah, then let's just try it. Let's do it. Let's fucking run that shit.
That's fair. I agree.
Because it was fucking great. It was one of the coolest sessions you guys have ever done.
Yeah, that's true. You weren't even there for the initial one.
I did a one-on-one thing in your apartment, and the shit was wild.
Yeah.
Well, I just had Devin sitting there, like nodding and like shaking his head solemnly
all the time.
Yeah. Like, just he'd shake his head solemnly and cross out a character name on a piece of paper when they died.
Yeah.
It was fucking great.
It's great. But yeah, no, that's actually I like the archetype idea. I think that's a really solid way to like, all right, so your character made it to the end of this path, quote unquote. Here's like a handful of archetypes you can pick from for this character, and then you can pick your class and everything after that. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, and then it's just like the stipulation of like, hey, just, you know, make sure that your character actually fits the archetype. Don't be like, yeah, my archetype is archaeologist, but my intelligence is a 6, and I'm a barbarian. And it's like, okay, so what does the archaeologist part play into it? Oh, not much. No, actually have like make it so your character can actually progress through the archetype.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, like, I again, that's a respect thing. I think the player needs to understand the purpose of the session 0.
Always just voicing it is an important thing. Of like, this is the rules I bring up. This is what I ask you to do. Like, have everything very upfront on the table of like, this is what is required for this, so there are absolutely no misunderstanding. Always gotta have that communication.
It's true.
I mean, I obviously respect that, but it's the option that someone might just misinterpret. Because there's people in our group that have never done the children's campaign, but Devin and I would snap to it immediately. We know how this shit goes. This ain't our first rodeo.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that does sound like a good idea. We'll have to see for sure. But that, unfortunately, is going to be it for us today. I have to get ready for a trip tomorrow. I have to leave it. I have to walk to the ferry at 5 in the morning. God, so
I also have to prepare for a trip. And once it gets dark, I run into my garage and record some more videos.
Yeah. So, fortunately, a good chat. I mean, we didn't quite stay on topic like I was hoping we would, but we did have some interesting conversations.
When do we ever, Cam?
I mean, that's kind of the point, I guess. We're not here to have like a straight dissertation on like aspects of gaming or anything.
If I was expected to come up with like a thesis statement and an argument and stick on top for 2 hours, I probably would have bailed from this podcast, dog. That
Oh, I
sounds
got
really
an F in the
fucking boring.
podcast. I would have been flunked out.
Yeah, it sounds really boring.
But so I guess hopefully there'll be a video out tomorrow. I've still yet to get something done. I got a lot to do tonight, so we'll see. But we have a video coming out Monday, and next Tuesday for Lancer, we may or may not have a session. I know Alex will be gone, but if everyone else is there, we should be there. If someone else has to call out for any reason, we'll just have to call it off for next week. So, that's how that goes. Let's see here. Any other news? There's a lot I'm working on. I got a lot of content coming up, and hopefully my life will balance out and everything will kind of smooth over soon. It's been a really rough couple months for me. I've been trying my best to stay on track, but life is very unforgiving at times. Also, we are already a third of the way to 3K. Nuts.
Hell yeah.
From 2K, I should say. And my goal is to hit 3,000 subs by July, which I'm sure we're gonna do. We'll probably actually do it by like end of May, probably, if things keep going the way they're going. And we're gonna have some stuff. I'm gonna try to get access to Rage of Elements early, so that's gonna be really cool. Get some cool stuff on Rage of Elements done. Any news comes out, we'll do chats on that. And everyone here now realize and recognize this channel is fast growing at this point. We're expected to hit over 5,000 by the end of this year, and maybe even hit 20,000 by next year at some point. As the projections go, who knows? Things could always change. You guys are here at the ground floor. You guys are here at a really good time to get to know and chat in the channel. The chat is not always gonna be this friendly, this nice, where we can easily read everything. It's eventually gonna get worse, and so take the opportunity to chat it up, because it's gonna get crazy before long, before anyone realizes it. I just thank everyone for being here. It's an exciting time to be on the channel for sure, and I look forward to growing with all of you. Any news, anything we can expect from you, Glue Boy?
I put out a video today. It's on the Tau and Warhammer 40k. They're cool for some people, not me. But if you like mech suits, go check out my video. It's linked in Cam's YouTube. You can go check me out there, or just Glue Boy. I think I'm the top result on YouTube at this point for Glue Boy. Pretty cool. And yeah, I got more shit coming out. Now that school's ending, I get to actually sit down and create some like higher effort, higher concept videos, and I have a couple ideas running around, and I'm excited to actually put them to the test. So expect some pretty cool things in the next coming months, honestly. I have one big project in particular I've been waiting to have the time for, and I'm really excited to sit down and actually work through it. I'm going to try and really step out of my content creation comfort zone and try to make some long, high effort video.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I've been waiting for you to get done for school for years now.
Yeah, dog. I'm excited to just have to deal with going to work, coming back, and doing YouTube or this. Either my YouTube or yours. So. Yeah. It's been exciting.
And also, thank you, El Macho. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's been crazy how much we've been growing so far. So, it's I got some more fun videos. I got some more people in D&D to make angry at me, no matter what I do, even when I compliment their classes. Who knows? But I don't know. Anyway, that's gonna be it from us. Go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.